Welcome to the MBUK podcast. This week, Rob is away riding bikes in Poland, but that's okay because joining all the way from his native Sweden is Emil Johannson. Emil is one of the most foremost slopestyle and freeride riders on the planet. He's a 4-time Slopestyle World Champion, a 13-time Crankworx winner, and 3-time Triple Crown winner too, which basically means that he won all 3 events in the Crankworx Tour in a year, 3 times. He's got more slopestyle wins of anyone on the planet and has also competed in events such as Redbull Rampage, showing an incredible breadth of skill. Emil's just launched a signature set of pads with G-Form. Thanks to those guys for sponsoring this episode of the MBUK podcast. So Emil, welcome to the podcast. How are you getting on?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great. A real honour to have you here, especially chatting to really an icon of slopestyle and freeride. Like you're a huge name. It's really impressive stuff. You've had recently you had a little bit of a slip up at Crankworx, so you've just come out of surgery. So how are things going?
Things are pretty well at the moment. All eyes looking forward. I had a surgery on my collarbone a week ago as it needed additional help rather than just the standard straightforward rest for a couple of weeks and then get back to it. I did have a crash at Crankworx, like you said. Have had a bit of a concussion, so I've been taking it quite easy just to let that do its thing, and now I'm feeling a lot better, and the rib hasn't really been much of a problem too, which I also ended up breaking. So yeah, I'm just on the mend for now, just trying to recover as fast as I can and do what I need to do in order to get back on the bike sooner than later.
Okay, so yeah, it was at Crankworx Cairns that you had a bit of a crash. It looked like a great run up until that point, obviously, but do you want to talk about how sort of what happened there? And you've done a collarbone, a rib, and a bit of a hit to the head.
Exactly. Well, there's to really break it down. It's a lot that went into place for that to happen. I've had a bit of time to reflect on it. Obviously, it's been a bit more than 2 weeks now, and the run went pretty much to plan. I did have a couple of slip-ups up top. I didn't really fully execute all the tricks I wanted to do, which is quite standard. Like it does happen at contests that you sort of have a set plan going into the event of what tricks you want to do, and sometimes it can be hard to fully execute on them in the first run, but since we have 2 runs, most of the time you're able to give it another go in the second run. But yeah, I had a slip up at the second last feature. I overcooked the speed. I went way too fast. And not only that, but I also fumbled a bit with my hand in the air, which caused me to sort of spend all the air time I had to try to find my way back on the bike and land on the wheels. But up on landing, the impact was so heavy that my back wheel sort of gave. I was by then probably 3-4 meters too far anyway, and it kind of tossed me in a fully unpredictable angle, so I couldn't really get my hands up or anything to try to protect myself. So I over-rotated to the right side and then just got tossed the other side. So it was quite an unfortunate way the crash ended up happening, and the mistake that happened, I've done the trick thousands of times by now, and it rarely happens. So it's quite frustrating to say the least. I was feeling good throughout the practice week and was really looking forward to be back competing. It's been 11 months.
Yeah, I was going to say
since I last dropped into an event.
Yeah, you had another crash at Red Bull Joyride back in 2024, and you say 9, 10, 11 months off the bike. This is the first big competition back after that.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually came off to really rewind. If we're gonna look into the past, I broke my left collarbone in April last year. Just 4 weeks post, or 5 weeks post that shoulder or past the break of my collarbone, the practice for Crankworx Cairns started. So after just 4 weeks, I tried to get back on. I was fortunate on that, like with that crash, that I didn't need any surgery to get it adjusted and fixed. So I was able to get back on the bike quite easily, and I was just spending time resting at home. I did get back on the bike for Crankworx Australia back in 2024. Was sort of able to put a run down. I obviously wasn't happy with the result, and but nevertheless, I was very satisfied with the fact that I was able to participate in the event, and just being a part of that event was a win in itself. With the fact that I was only on my bike like 2 or 3 times before I flew out, so it was a big it's an
achievement.
It's a bit of a gamble to fly out to an event not having been able to prepare and then try to compete against the best riders in the world. I mean, it's a tough task as it is, and then to do it unprepared is nevertheless even harder. But got home from that event and then did Crankworx Innsbruck 2024, and I was sort of still honestly like trying to catch up to speed after the collarbone injury, and my body wasn't really cooperating fully, and I wasn't really able to perform at the level I was satisfied with. So coming home from Innsbruck, I was really hungry to put in the work, and more than anything, just having the opportunity to prepare for Redbull Joyride. And coming into that event, I felt good on my bike and was really looking forward to a week of competing in Whistler. I did have a crash in practice the day before finals. Tumbled, like I exploded off the bike, tumbled, and my hand swelled up and my shoulder, like I struggled to lift my arm. But back in 23, I did have a crash in practice and I struggled to lift my arm, and I still did a competition and ended up winning the event. So that sort of put some sort of trust in your abilities, that you're able to sometimes go above and beyond, just due to the fact that you've been preparing so much for an event. So the next day the day of finals, I was doing practice runs, just trying to sort of piece it all together with the given cards I had on my hand, and ended up doing another mistake, which was purely due to the fact that I couldn't really rely on the strength of my shoulder. I came in back wheel heavy, and I had like no sort of strength in trying to like rebalance the weight distribution on the bike and try to come in more even. And it was, as frustrating as it was that crash happened, it was probably for the better, because it sort of really emphasized on the fact that I wasn't able to ride to all of my ability. But that put me on a very long path. Like everything looked good initially. I was just told to rest, and so I did have that second crash, and then I went to hospital. I'm like, I better check this out fully. Did an x-ray on my hand. It didn't really show anything broken. I did an x-ray on my shoulder. It indicated that I had a fracture in my humerus, which is like the upper, like close to the rotator, like the upper end of the upper arm. And it just looked like a fracture. So we're like, okay, well, just rest for a few weeks. It will heal itself, and you get back to it. It won't be any issues. I did rest for a few weeks. I started training again because I was trying to do Rampage. So I got back on my bike, or I didn't get back on the bike, but I got back in the gym and I was doing strength work. And the shoulder initially felt better, but then just sort of faded. Like I wasn't getting any progress from week to week, and it put me in a position where I felt like I needed like a second opinion on it. So I went to Austria, where Red Bull have their athlete performance center, and just after a couple of days there, where we were able to see that the fracture had not healed. It had caused, like, it never really found its way home, so I needed a surgery done, and I had some other problems with my shoulder, so we made a decision to go ahead and get all those things sorted fully. And I took some metal out my right hand, and then that put me on a long road to recovery. It actually went on for like 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to undergo another surgery in December when we found out that I had torn 2 ligaments in my left hand in the same crash, which was nothing I initially had a problem with, but as my hand really never got better, I still had a lot of pain in it. So I just sort of kept trying to find an answer to why it wouldn't improve, and then we found out the ligaments were torn and made a decision to have a surgery, and that put me off another bit as well. So it's been quite a long process of a lot of surgeries. I had 3 surgeries now in 9 or 10 months, so it's been pretty far from ideal, I would say, when it comes to
I guess
riding in general.
I mean, if you watch, the competitions that you're entering, obviously you're a world-class athlete at the top of the sport. You're pushing limits. You're always riding, I guess, towards the edge. Even if you have been practicing these things, thousands of times, inevitably accidents happen, and inevitably, occasionally, they're going to cause an injury. But it sounds like you've had a particularly bad run of that, which is really obviously unfortunate. I guess being a Red Bull athlete is probably a good place to be in that respect. They, from what I understand, they really look after those teams. They're sort of riders. So I guess there's silver linings in that. You've been looked after well.
For sure. Red Bull has been a tremendous help. I think without them, I never would have really gotten to the conclusion that quickly that I needed that surgery done on my right shoulder. And they've sort of been my right hand throughout the whole rehab process of everything, like for the shoulder, like my right shoulder surgery last year, and then my hand surgeries, and now my left shoulder surgery too. So they've been absolutely amazing through this process, and I have a lot to thank for sure.
I mean, you obviously spent quite a bit of time off the bike before Cairns with the industry, and obviously maybe Cairns didn't finish how anyone would have wished it to. But how did it feel getting back on the bike after such a long time off and competing again? Is competing sort of part of your blood? Is this what you really sort of strive to do, or is it a byproduct of just enjoying riding slopestyle?
I love competitions. It's like one of the best ways to sort of test yourself, even though the way it's structured isn't always that fair, because we only get 2 runs, and the weather might not always be ideal and that stuff. But I always sort of loved competing and do all the events all around the world, but competitions isn't really why I fell in love with riding. Like, not at all. Like, for me, riding bikes is sort of my life. It's what I spent the last 15, I don't know, now it's probably 17 years sort of doing and thinking about every day. And just to have that taken away for such a long time really makes you appreciate and be grateful for the time you actually get to spend on the bike. And if there's anything I can take away from the times I've had a lot of setbacks and injuries and been forced to be off my bike, is that it makes me appreciate every little good and bad day that I get on the bike, that it's not always just about having the best day. It's actually just a good day when you're on the bike, and it's when you really think about it, frustrating that you need to sort of be forced off the bike to really appreciate it that way. But I don't think there's any way to really sort of bring that base level down to where it's like just appreciating to be on the bike. Because when you do it like consistently and daily, it easily turns into something that you sort of take for granted. But that's just the evolution of anything we do, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, do you ride, you know, obviously you ride slopestyle a lot, but do you ride other types of mountain biking or road cycling at all?
Totally. I've now the past 2 years since I've undergone 4 different shoulder injuries. I've actually rode a bit of gravel bike. It's sort of been an easy way for me to get out, get the heart rate going, and sort of just get out on a bike without risking having any unpredictable sort of forces put through the upper body. And it's something I really enjoy. I think it's, for me, like just being on 2 wheels is a lot of fun. Gravel bike and road bikes is probably where I spent the least amount of time for sure. I've only really done it when I've been injured, to be honest, or coming off an injury, because when I'm feeling 100% or close to 100%, I try to spend all my time on some sort of gravity focused bike. But yeah, I ride a lot of e-bikes, enduro, free ride, downhill, like whatever you want to call it, really. I enjoy anything from the BMX to the full suspension to 100 mils of travel bike. And I think it's what keeps it fun too, you know, that if I just were to ride my slope bike every time I go on a ride, it would be a bit like, it wouldn't feel as exciting. Now it's like easy for me to jump on a different bike if I feel a bit burnt from just doing that one thing, and it sort of sparks some motivation and interest in the other bikes too. And I think that contrast and sort of the diversity of the bikes is what keeps it fun, and honestly what keeps me loving riding bikes. And I'm very fortunate to have such a big list of different bikes that can sort of do different things, and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be a question for later on, but obviously, you know, you're known for competing at slopestyle. You've competed at Rampage, but how much sort of use is it being able to, you know, have all these skills in one area? Do they draw onto other areas? You know, when you're riding your trail bike, are you sort of popping 360? You know, like how useful is it to be able to ride all these different bikes?
I think I do have a lot to thank from my younger years of starting to ride bikes on a hardtail. I did have a BMX, but it never really appealed to me, as it wasn't functioning as well as my mountain bike. Like the mountain bike I had was a lot nicer, and you can ride a lot more ungroomed stuff. You can just be out and have a session. But then through the years and starting to go to different skate parks and dirt jump spots and stuff like that, and sort of seeing slopestyle evolve, that was sort of where all my focus just went. That was sort of where I felt the most at home. And then it wasn't until I actually got sponsored by Trek that I got my first full suspension bike. Up until then, I only owned one bike that was a hardtail with 100 mils of travel. So I was very niched up until 2017. And that was the first time I really got the chance to sort of have my own full suspension bike. I obviously had been on a downhill bike a couple of times prior to that, but then to think that I didn't really have my own downhill bike back in 2017 up until 2017, and then in 2019 I participated in Rampage the first time. It's quite a quick transition, but as I was on before about is I have so much to thank for the fact that I did ride a smaller hardtail bike initially, and there's a lot of transition that goes over into the full suspension riding, but also a lot of things that not necessarily have helped me. Like the first time I set up my downhill bike, I was riding just as much tire pressure as I do on my hardtail, which at the time was like 5.5, 6 bars.
Okay.
Like rock solid tire
Yeah.
pressure. Like you're not enjoying a single bump on the road down a bike park, you know. Besides the jumps. The jumps are nice, but as soon as you land on the ground, it's super harsh.
Yeah.
But that was the only way I knew riding, you know. So it took a bit of time for me to figure out like suspension setups, and honestly, still to this day, I wouldn't say I perfected, but I found a lot. Like I've gotten a lot closer to what I think is the ideal setup for what type of riding that I do, and it's a lot nicer than compared to back in 2017 when I had a fully just super solid bike, because obviously the fork and shock was pretty pumped up as well. So as much as it has pros, it definitely has some cons as well, coming from that side of biking.
I think one thing I was going to ask later on actually, but I'll bring it forward, is when you're competing in an event, slopestyle, I've noticed that over the times, you know, you do swap between a shorter travel full sus bike and a hardtail sometimes, I guess. Like what is it in a slopestyle course that might dictate whether you're using a full sus or a hardtail?
From the day that I got on Trek back in 2017 up until Australia last year, where I just came off my broken collarbone, every single event that I had done was on a full suspension slope bike. But I sort of saw a transition in slopestyle where the courses went from being built a certain way to being built the way they are now, and with the sort of desire to sort of do new tricks, and sometimes the jumps are not really to the size that I would need them to be for me to do it on a full suspension. And a lot of the rest, like basically the majority of the field is on a hardtail. It sort of felt like just a fun thing initially to sort of see how I could approach a contest if I were to show up on a hardtail. Because from, I would say end of October till end of February or beginning of March, I usually ride a hardtail, because that's what I ride in the skate parks, and whenever it's winter back home, it's the only place I ride is pretty much indoors. So it wasn't like something that was super unfamiliar. I just hadn't really competed on it for a while, and I'm super fortunate with Trek. They look after me and help me with the bikes, and just having two different options for contests is amazing, because you can sort of pick and choose what sort of bike you believe is the right choice for that course. Just like the downhill riders sort of mix with setup, I can also mix with my the setup of suspension on my slope bike, but I can also just ride a hardtail, and then I got a bit of a lighter bike. It allows for a bit more tricks with a bit less airtime. So it's for me, it's how to say, I think there's a lot of pros and cons with both sure. bikes for sure, and it sort of depends on how the course is built and what I feel like doing for that specific event as well, if it's oriented a certain way or not. So
we may see you swapping between them a little bit more in the future.
Yeah. For sure. I did, first event last year on a hardtail, second event on a slope bike, third event I were on a slope bike as well for, but wasn't able to participate. But I think it's for me, it does the job. For the majority of the field, they just ride hardtails. There's a couple of dudes that basically just ride slope bikes, but it's a lot more slimmed down. And all brands don't offer it as well to the riders. So I think even though some would like to be on the full suspension, it isn't really an option.
Gives you a bit of an advantage in some respects, I guess. I mean, Crankworx is obviously it's a huge name in mountain biking. I guess it's probably one of the things that's really progressed the sport full stop. Is competing at Crankworx sort of the top tier of competition for you?
for sure, when it comes to slopestyle competitions, it's definitely been. There are a lot of other events that I've through the years have been to and I've done. I think out of an experience standpoint, like an event like District Ride is super unique. The way you're riding through a city and you have, I think last time it happened, they said it was like up to 120,000 spectators.
Wow.
I don't know if that's through the whole weekend or if it's just throughout the day or if it's specifically for the event itself. But it's also very far away from the type of riding that I do, in the sense that everything is like, you sort of almost have full-size slopestyle jumps, but in a city, and everything is built in wood. Like there's rarely dirt. There's obviously a couple of sections that have a bit of dirt, but the majority is just plywood. So it's as close as they can get it in the environment that they want to do it. But and then you have Rampage, which is obviously sort of mountain biking's free ride and all mountain comparison, if you look at skiing and snowboarding as a sort of comparison in that sense. So there's a lot of different events, and now we have natural selection too, which I was looking forward to be part of, but I just couldn't make it happen with the shoulder rehab.
I wanted to ask you about natural selection, but first I just wondered, obviously we speak to a lot of racers on the MBUK podcast, downhillers, and cross country and stuff, but and in that it's sort of pretty black and white when it comes to who wins. It's the fastest. In slopestyle, Rampage, all that sort of thing, it's score based rather than timed. How do you like that? Is that it's controversial at times. It raises sort of eyebrows now and again when the results come through. But are you generally happy with that? Yeah. It's like you can look at it a lot of different ways. But obviously it's, if you come from a racing perspective, you can be like, okay, well, how do you navigate this? How do you know what's gonna be the best? And to be honest, you don't know, and you can't expect the judges to actually know the complexity of the tricks that the top 10 riders on the Crankworx circuit does as well, because those tricks have been evolved throughout the last 5 years. And sometimes there's tricks that happen at a contest for the first time ever. So it's like, how are you going to be able to judge that to 100%, like in the most accurate way possible? And that's where it's tricky. Like I think a lot of times, especially for the spectators, it would be easier to know that a certain trick scores a certain way. But then that takes away the beauty in the sport too, where you could just in that sense sort of try to load each jump with as much complexity and as high of a score as possible, and it sort of takes away the overall impression, the execution, and how are you supposed to sort of give points for that stuff? It gets like the closest we've been to doing that is like in speed and style, for example. When you look at speed and style, they have needed to set certain times, but that's just because they are racing against each other, that they need to have that, because if it were for the overall impression, it would sort of be slopestyle but head to head and sort of with speed, but I think when it comes to slopestyle, to have the sport be the way it is, where it allows for a rider to sort of bring out something fresh and sort of take a bit of a risk with it too. Like there's definitely contest runs that I've done over the years that I don't know how they're gonna score, but I know it's the best possible product that I can deliver, and it's the most technical sort of riding that I can do. And even if you were to take the results away, I would be the most satisfied when that's the product that I deliver.
And a lot of times my perspective on it isn't shared with maybe the crowd and the spectators. They might think something different. But for me, I wouldn't want to change the way I ride to try to please that, because then the whole, like, the thing I'm good at and the thing I do to the best possible level is doing it the way I do it. So with like you talked about as well, with Rampage, it gets even more complicated than with slopestyle for a spectator, because you can't experience the mountain, you can't see the features. And in slopestyle, a lot of times it's a lot easier because you can take the runs feature by feature. You can sort of break it down and see where one rider might win over the other. But then that sometimes isn't fair either, because one rider might score lower on a specific feature in order to elevate another feature. So you almost end up in this overall impression area anyway.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like, you know, you piece together a run that I guess in many respects it's almost like art, right? You've judged that to be what you want to create on this line, and then the judges have to sort of put a number to it. They've got an incredibly tough job, I guess. You know, I was watching some of your runs actually earlier on today, and you know, even listen to the commentary and you know what they can see you doing and translating that so quickly into like the names of the tricks, but then you're having to piece it all together and make sure that it actually works as a run, as a sort of a whole story down the hill. It's a tough one. I mean, is judging something in your future, do you think? Would you like that responsibility?
I think I don't really have a comment on that as of now. I haven't really put any thought into it, but like you mentioned, it is a very tough job for sure. It's I think a lot of times as well, when it comes to the spectators of an event, they expect the score to be consistent. So it's like, well, why did he get 0.5 points more, or he got that points more? It's the scoring system is built in a way where they give us a score in order to rank us, because it's easier in that sense. So that's where the overall impression is important, because you can sort of put a rider, like you can give them a score and then you can sort of compare it to the scores around that. And if it's not really applicable to put them there, they can sort of push the number up a bit. But if we had like given scores for each trick, that wouldn't really work. And I think as much as it would be positive, it would also be unfavorable for the sport in a sense, because sometimes it's a lot more that weighs into it than just this one trick that might score a bit more, you know?
Sure. How do you see slopestyle as a sport progressing over the next sort of 5 years? You say it's changed a lot in the last sort of 5 years with new tricks, new progression. I mean, do you want to see bigger jumps, you know, more tricks, more technical stuff? How would you like to see sort of the Crankworx tour, for example, progress?
I think the beauty with slopestyle, it's ours as competitors' job to sort of create the future, and open doors and sort of bring it into a positive light where the next generation want to sort of keep it going, you know? And I have my sort of view on it, and there's, as long as the start list is and as long as the spectator list is, there's that many opinions as well on where they want it to go. And with slopestyle, sort of, I think, finding its way more than it, because when you look at Crankworx Whistler, for example, it started back in 2004, and it was, people would show up on all sort of different full suspension bikes, whatever they could get their hands on, and it sort of started evolving, and then people started riding slope bikes, and then now we have people riding hardtails, and I think I don't really think that was the right way. I think we're gonna see where the future takes us with the style of bike we are on, but the features and how they're built there's still so much stuff to do. And I think when it comes to the course builds and the variety as well on courses throughout the year is really interesting, because you could have events where one event could be more oriented towards bigger hits, like bigger jumps, and you could have one be more oriented towards other features like bones and quarter pipes and whale tails and step downs and stuff like that. But I wouldn't want to predict the future in that sense of like saying this is how it's going to be in 5 years. But I do believe there's so much more to be done with the given features we have, and with slightly modified features, and just seeing how fast the sport has progressed since people started building their own compounds, and just airbags in general being more and more accessible for people. I think it's just gonna escalate. Like, you look at skiing and snowboarding, and it has just in the past 10 years evolved tremendously. I remember watching the first triple corks, and now they're doing like 5, and I don't even know how many spins they end up doing, but it's it's very impressive to see. And where slopestyle is going to go, it's going to be cool to just to watch and be part of, and to then in the future see where it evolves.
You played an advisory role, I think, in natural selection. It was quite a unique event in many respects, I guess. It's sort of blended slopestyle and freeride, kind of a bit of Rampage, a bit of Crankworx in one. Do you want to see more events like this? It was visually, at least, it was an incredible event to watch from the computer screen.
I think natural selection fills a hole in the market when it comes to competition events at the moment. We sort of have the very ungroomed style riding, which is Rampage, where riders need to show up and build a course down untouched terrain. But in the past, we sort of seen how they have needed to repeat old venues, and then that sort of puts a bit of benefit to the riders that have been there in the past, and riders end up sort of riding the same sort of line now that they did maybe 8 years ago, but evolving it to fit them for the type of riding and the style rider they are today. But with natural selection, it sort of ends up in between there, where it was 2 different lines that each rider needed to do 1 run on each, but is a lot more groomed in the sense that it's a built course for everyone to ride, and you're still judged in a similar way as you would be for Rampage or slopestyle. But with the amount of features, you have a lot more hits where you're not seeing a Cork 720, And I think it's very good for just because we do have downhill racing, we have events like Hardline, which is extreme downhill racing. And then we have Rampage and slopestyle, and there's nothing really in between there. And when I grew up watching the FMB World Tour, I grew up watching the pros participate in events that wasn't only slopestyle and dirt jump oriented, but it was also a lot more free riding. Back then, Rampage was also part of the FMBA World Tour. I don't know if that's applicable today, to be honest. I think it's good the way it is, but there's nothing in between. And unless you're part of Rampage, there's no way to be competing in a free ride oriented event, really. You have Fest Series events and events like Dark Fest, but there's nothing really more to it when it comes to competitions. So I think it's yeah, it's gonna be super exciting to see where it goes. I've loved watching the event in the past. Before it happened on mountain bikes, like for skiing and snowboarding, skiing was introduced this year, but for snowboarding specifically, I'm a massive fan of those sports too. So to see it and then have that transition happen into mountain biking is pretty cool, I think.
That's pretty cool. A couple of days ago, you hinted on your Instagram account that Rampage might be back in your future at some point. Is that something we can glean from what you were posting?
I think you could, unless you're top 8 in the year prior, like if you're top 8, I don't know, that number might have changed for this year, but unless you're top 8 in the year prior to the competition, you have no guaranteed spot until the invites get sent out. And the invites get sent out in July. So I have no clue if I'm a part of the event or not by now. I was basically just bored on my phone and looking through some old footage, and I posted it because I miss riding my bike at the moment, and I loved being a part of Rampage back in 2023, and I was looking to try to put down a better run and sort of came up short, and that got me really hungry to get back there, and I was really looking forward to be back on the start list for 2024, but then the shoulder surgery and injury sort of put that on hold. So it's definitely something I want to do a lot more of in the future, but if I'm a part of this year's list or not, I still don't know.
Certainly be something that you'd like to be, if not this year, then next. I mean, Rampage seems to be probably the one aspect of mountain biking that it feels like the average person on the street will never be able to experience. Like, what is it like going to Utah, building huge lines, sending them, and being there as part of the whole sort of circus of it? It must be the most intense week going.
It is something that you really have to experience, for sure. It's I struggle to explain it to people, like even close friends to mine and family, unless you've been there. It's and I wouldn't say it's like you need to be there to experience how gnarly it is. You just need to be there to experience what it is, because I don't think a lot of people even can experience what it is through just a screen, you know. Because you definitely nowadays it's a lot of great coverage from the event, and you can just by the fact that you can look on your Instagram, you can see an iPhone clip or a GoPro clip of something looking gnarly, you know how gnarly it is in real life. Like, because you know, like everyone that ever had a like GoPro or POV camera or filmed something with their phone and done something they're sort of stoked about, and then they go look at it and you're like, oh, that doesn't look anywhere close to how it feels in real life.
Story of my life.
yeah. And then you have a clip or you film something that actually is gnarly, but not necessarily looks gnarly on the phone camera. But then you see a clip where it actually looks unbelievable. Then you're like, okay, well, that is probably out of this world to be able to see in real life. And Utah is very unique. Like, it's the way the terrain is, and the way the hill is so wide as well. Especially, I would say the 2019 venue where the riders were last year, it's quite a narrow and steep site, which forces a lot of riders to have very steep upper sections, but also makes everyone sort of have pretty high speed from the beginning in comparison to the year prior, which unless you had a route down the hill straight down, you needed to have a transport section. And that sort of just destroys the whole flow in the run, which is unfortunate, because in the dream world, you would have everyone be able to build a line on a blank slate. But that just doesn't happen when you have 20 different riders and the hill already having multiple event years in the past. But the cool thing with Rampage is that if you go there as a first year venue and have a vision, and even if you go there when it's a second year venue, you can build a line that's oriented more to your style of riding than you could at any other event. You can't show up to hardline and be like, oh, I don't like this rock section, so I'm gonna skip that. Or show up to Crankworx and be like, oh, I don't like this drop, I'm not gonna hit it. Like there's a few cases where people have skipped features at Crankworx and sort of found their way down anyway, but you can't build what you want. And that's what makes Rampage super unique. You can show up and you can have a vision, and you can, to the best of your ability, at least try to sculpture the hill to fit and allow you your type of riding and the way you ride to really showcase in the best possible way. It's a lot of hard work. It's full hours, full days for 8 days in a row, and then try to, through those last 4 days, try to get on the bike and get familiar and feel good to do the gnarliest run of your life. But it's a super cool event, and every time I've been there, I've been hungry to go back.
Amazing. I mean, obviously, it's one of those events that creates so much hype, both obviously for, core mountain bike friends, or fans, sorry, but also like the wider public. Creating these visually spectacular, clips of mountain biking is pretty wild. I mean, outside of slopestyle, you also do a lot of filmmaking for segments for both your own edits and bigger ones. The segment in Anytime, for example, was probably one of the best I've ever watched. Really enjoyed it. Do you prefer do you have a preference for competing or for creating clips? And, how about the filming process? Is it something that you enjoy being involved in?
I definitely enjoy it. I love it. If I could control time and have more hours in a day and more time in my schedule throughout the summer and throughout the season, I would like to do a lot more video segments. I would like to do a lot more competitions if that opportunity came around as well. But unfortunately, you can't do it all at once. And through the last couple of years, I've needed to sort of focus, and that have put me in a position where I've done a lot more Crankworx events than I've done video projects. But video projects is something that I haven't really started even to evolve really with. I've had a couple of opportunities to be a part of a full-length film and have my own video segments, but it's a lot more work to be done there, and it's a lot more that I would like to do in the future. I think going back to what I said about Rampage, where you can build something to really emphasize and really bring a rider from, or really showcase their riding style in the best way possible. When you have a video project, you can at least try to the best of your ability to build a course or a feature to maybe try something completely new that you haven't seen before, or just to do something that you've done in the past to an even higher level. So yeah.
Take the clip in Anytime, for example. Like, how long does it take to produce that 1, 3, 4, 5 minute segment? I mean, I guess there's a lot of planning. You've got to find location scouting, you've got to build it, and then the shooting process. It's not a 2-day job, is it?
No, it's not. I think the planning for that started back in end of 2022 or beginning of 2023. Just scheduling, okay, sure. When do we have time to do it? Until Film reached out to me about this opportunity. We found a time slot where we wanted to do it. And then we started looking at locations. We started looking at weather forecast websites that indicate, okay, how much rain is going to drop in January, February, March, April at these given locations, to try to find a location that wouldn't rain out. And then we ended up going to California, and the whole thing almost rained out. Right. Even though we did all the ground planning to try to select a month where it didn't rain at a location which was like some sort of weatherproof and had good sun, and it ended up being one of the gnarliest rain months they've had in a long time. But nevertheless, we managed to get a segment done, and I was happy with the outcome, even though I felt like a lot was left on the table. First off, due to weather. Secondly, due to just the time we had. I think we were there for, it ended up being like 2.5 weeks.
Okay.
I showed up, I started riding, and then the rain hit, and then we're like put on hold for 4-5 days, and then started riding, and then rained again, and then I started riding, and I think I rode for like 2 or 3 days, and then on the actually the last day we had, I broke my collarbone. But we were already prior to that day looking to extend for a couple of days to try to really get everything shot and actually everything running. So a lot of the shots from that segment is actually from 1 or maybe 2 sessions that I've had on those jumps, which is sometimes the reality when it comes to projects like that. Due to weather and stuff, it was a lot of different sections that we built the land we were at were massive. It was like you would jump into side by side and drive for 15 minutes to get to one place, but most of them were pretty close to each other. You could sort of see to the next one, but still very spread out. Like that one hit where I did like a foot plant at that tree, that was very off compared to the other sort of sections in the segment. But super cool opportunity. I would love to do a lot more projects like that and sort of see where I can evolve that in the future.
Do you find that getting the perfect shot or winning a run, which is the riskiest thing to do? Because obviously, when if you're doing a segment, you want everything to be perfect, so you must be doing the same jump over and over and over. Maybe adding in new tricks you've not done before. Whereas on a competition run, it's you got one shot really, but you got to do your biggest tricks potentially. So, is there a difference in risk there? Which is easiest?
I think there's a massive difference in risk difference, and it obviously depends on what level you want to do it at. But when it comes to competitions, I think weather and the set time is what makes it the most dangerous, because you can't really, like at Rampage you have a wind hold. I think you can stand up top and wait for up to 8 minutes, but unless you drop you get a DNF. So you can't really stand up there and sort of wait for the perfect weather window forever. You sort of just gotta go and create the best opportunity you can out of what you're given, but with a project you can put it on hold for another day if the weather isn't good or if you're not feeling like it, obviously. But for every day that you put it on hold, it costs money. Like you might be renting land, camera equipment, accommodation and all that stuff. So it's a different sort of pressure in that sense too for projects, but you always have the opportunity to back down more on a project than you have for a contest run. And at a contest run, unless you stomp it the first or second time, you don't get a third, and then you gotta wait for another year to try to do it again, at that given event. And it might be that the course is different, so it might not be that you can sort of do the tricks you would like to do. In preparation for a lot of events over the years, I've worked on tricks that I would like to perfect and deliver at those events, and then I show up and I'm like, I cannot do a single one of the tricks I've spent the last few weeks practicing on for this course because the course doesn't allow it. And then I might show up to an event, I have a sort of something I want to do, and then I end up being able to go above and beyond with my expectations because the course all of a sudden allows me to get a bit more extra time on this specific trick, so it's so hard to predict going into events. It's also hard to predict for video projects. You can sort of have a rough plan on and an estimate on what you would like to do, but you can't really take it for granted that you're going to be able to do those gnarly big tricks.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast that, when you were at Cairns, you dropped in and things didn't quite go to plan potentially during your run. You are going into a run with a plan of what trick you're going to do at each jump, but when something goes wrong halfway down, you don't crash, but you can maybe not pull off the trick you wanted. Does that play with your mind a little bit, or do you always prepared for like a plan B?
It always depends on how big of a screw up it is. If you completely end up straight airing a jump, the run for getting a podium is pretty much out, like for sure. But when it comes to missing a bar spin or missing a tail whip or sort of getting a bit squirrely or jumping a bit far or completely maybe just improvising on a trick because you sort of forget what you were supposed to do going into the jump, the run to still there's still room to sort of put a run down. But in those times, I think when you do a competition run, obviously all riders are different, but unless you give up at the feature where you screw up, it's always a chance to sort of get a result, Sure. There's a case of there's multiple examples that you can push up from history where it has happened. I've had runs that I sort of screw up at, but I was at least able to sort of still hold it together and walk away from the day with a result that I was sort of satisfied with. Yeah.
I guess other people might not know you've screwed up, so who's judging?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I might be looking to do a 3 triple tail whip and I end up doing a 3 windshield wiper because I just mid-air realized that I blew the speed or I didn't get the pop or I do a 3 double whip instead. It's that happens, I think, for all riders, that you sort of approach a run and you want to do a certain trick on a certain feature, but then you might need to just improvise for sure.
Outside of competing and filming, you've just had, you've had a few collabs of different brands. You've just launched your signature collection with G-Form. How does that sort of thing come about? Is it something that you sort of look forward to?
I've looked forward to launching this knee and elbow pad collection for a long time. We started working on it a couple of years ago. I think I've had my first prototype pads back in 2021 sometime, and then it evolved, and then it evolved again, and then G-Form started using the ReZero technology, and then we sort of revamped it and made it fit to that, and then you have the finished product now, which it does what it's supposed to do. It's like, in my opinion, the best protection that I ever had, and I wish I were able to have that sort of protection as a kid. Like, I always struggled with knee pads and stuff. They would slide down during the session and you would crash and they would just fly off the knee, and you would wear the protection, but then when you really needed it, it would just not be there for you. So I'm super stoked on how it turned out, to be honest.
That's cool. So you've been working on that for a couple of years, and how many iterations are you going through? How much time are you spending with G-Form sort of coming up with those designs? And obviously the graphics are pretty cool as well on there.
Thank you. Well, I think I would definitely need to look through the archive on different folders and stuff. On exactly how many different prototypes we had, but it's been a work in progress, and I've been actually testing a lot of the pads, or the protection pads as well. We've done adjustments to the length of the sleeves, to the stretch, what type of padding it is, what type of anything from the way the silicone on the inside of the sleeve is done so they don't slide down, or the way the graphics are made. And there's been so many iterations and changes throughout the years, and especially throughout the last bit of work block that we had up until where we needed to make the decision on, okay, what are we going to go to produce for the masses. and yeah, it's a super fun process to be honest. Like it's a dream come true for me as a kid and as an adult. Like I've always loved product development, and I've been very fortunate in the past that I've been able to do it with a lot of brands, and there's been a lot, like a big learning curve to go from working on my first prototype and potentially signature product to what it is now. So I think yeah, it's sort of hard to put into words, but to see something go from thought to reality, and then have the product be available for people beyond myself is pretty cool.
Yeah, it must be ace just having your name. I'd love to have a Tom Marvin signature knee pad. It's probably not. It's probably not going to happen for a little while. In terms of sort of the wider sort of slopestyle, freestyles, and free ride scene, you know, what other riders do you think at the moment are killing it? Who do you get excited to go and see ride and compete?
To sit here and name drop, I wouldn't really be able to do that without missing a few. To be honest, there's a lot of good youth coming up in slopestyle. You see them being a part of the start list. There's obviously, you see now with Instagram and stuff being structured the way it is, where you get a lot of stuff up that isn't necessarily from people you follow. You also get exposed to a lot more riders than you would have been in the past. So I think it's super interesting. I think the sport is doing good. We have a sport that's evolving. We have a biking industry that is growing in the sense that I feel like it's more and more people being out on bikes. Obviously, the biking industry isn't doing the best, but nevertheless, there's a lot of people riding bikes and being stoked. So I think it's going in the right direction anyway.
Before we sort of wrap it up, I did want to ask, what would be your tips to anyone who's wanting to get into, you know, dirt jump, into slope, into that sort of thing? What would you say to a 12, 13, 14-year-old who's watching this thinking, oh, how can I sort of progress to the levels that you have?
I think it sounds kind of cliche, but just sort of do what you can with what you're given. I have pretty humble beginnings. Like I didn't have access to big airbag setups. I didn't have access to massive bike parks. Like I said, I didn't have a downhill bike till I was pretty much almost 18 years old. And you have a lot of youth now that are 10 when they get their first one. They obviously going to have a lot more experience by the time they're 15 than I ever were able to get. But nevertheless, the sport is always evolving, and I think the most important thing when you're choosing to sort of pursue something is because you do it because you purely love it. Because success and hardship and like lows and highs throughout a career, if it even ends up being a career, is a lot easier to go through if you do it because you purely love it. So I think just choosing something that you enjoy, and don't choose it because of any external pressure. Because if it comes from external pressure and then you don't get the external validation, then it's all gonna fall through. So it's tough, I think, for especially young kids. Like as much as they want to do something they love, they're a lot of times very affected by external input and stuff like that. And I think it's easier when you get older to sort of sit down and sort of, this is the thing I would like to do and this is what I'd like to do.
Great. Well, Emil, we'll wrap it up there. I mean, obviously, all the best with your recovery. We hope it's sort of quick and as painless as possible, and you'll be back on your bike very soon. I'm sure you will.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you coming on Squadcast as it is to come and chat to us. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the MBUK podcast. So thanks ever so much. Of course, thank you to G-Form for sponsoring this episode as well. There's plenty more podcasts. There will be a link on screen to all our podcasts with pro riders and industry people. There's some really interesting stuff on there. But again, thanks ever so much, Emil. We really appreciate it.